أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم. Today we have to start from verse number 24. We had read 23 last time, but I would like to go back to verse number 23 just to catch the thread of the narration. For those who were not here before in our previous classes, I'd like to tell them that we are doing Surah number 12, that is Surah Yusuf. And we have already read about him from his childhood, what happened to him, and how he was thrown into a well by his jealous stepbrothers, and how a caravan passing by managed to, pick him out of the well because they were looking for water. And then they thought he was a runaway slave and he sold them in Egypt. And the person who bought him in Egypt happened to be, his title in the Quran is Aziz, Al-Aziz. And Aziz was the second man to the king. So he was like a prime minister. And he was a very important man, and he took this child to his house and told his wife to keep him with honor, which means that other servants had some other kind of accommodation and other privileges, but he was given a place of honor in the house. And then he reached maturity. And here in verse number 22, it is said that when he reached maturity, we bestowed on him wisdom and knowledge. And this is how we reward the virtuous. So maturity and wisdom and knowledge, all these things are, the words in Arabic is hukman, which means wisdom and the ability to judge. And all these qualities combined are the basic requirements of prophethood. So many scholars have concluded that at this point, prophethood was bestowed on Yusuf alayhi salam. And he was given, his special forte was his knowledge of dream interpretation and of being able to tell future events, plus the knowledge of the mysteries and the adab or the manners or etiquette needed in submitting to God. So even though he had left his house as a child, maybe 12 or 13 years old, but his father being a prophet as well, Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, Jacob, he was already instilled with all these qualities, besides the fact that it is God who trains the prophets himself. So now we are on verse number 23. وَرَاوَدتُّهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. So she in whose house he was started to seduce him in order to attract him to herself. Now we know that Yusuf alayhi salam was an extremely good-looking person. The word beautiful is also used for him, which is not normally used for men, but he was so attractive that he's supposed to have been beautiful. And as he grew up, the wife of the Aziz was attracted to him, and she started to seduce him. And one day she locked the doors and said to him, "Come to me." He said, "May God protect me. My Lord has kept me with honor. The unjust cannot prosper." Now here some commentators think that the word Lord here, the word in Arabic is Rab, and he says, Innahu Rabbi Asana Maswaya. That means, my Lord has given me a good situation or a house. And here some commentators think by Lord he means God. But from the story that we have been reading, it seems that he is referring to his master, the Aziz. So he says he is repulsed by this idea, and he says that my Lord has been so good to me, so I cannot betray him. And also if he's talking about God, then it means that he could not betray God and could not be ungrateful. And this is the opinion of a commentator by the name of Al-Qushayri. وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَنْ رَأَىٰ بُرْهَانَ رَبِّهِ كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ إِنَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِنَا الْمُخْلَصِينَ. She desired him, and he would have desired her, if he had not seen a sign from his Lord. The purpose of this was to remove from Yusuf both evil and immorality. Indeed, he was of our chosen and pure devotees. Now, I'd like to read a hadith Qudsi in this connection. Hadith Qudsi is a hadith which has been related by God, and it has been revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this says, if a servant of mine desires to do a bad deed but does not commit it, I shall count this as a good deed. Actually, this is a long hadith, and I'm reading just the portion which applies here. That if a servant of mine, like if a person feels like doing something wrong or thinks about something wrong, but he doesn't actually commit it, he controls himself, then God says, I shall count this as a good deed. Here it says that if he had not seen a sign from his Lord. Now, various commentators have given different opinions about what the sign could have been. And also we realize that under similar circumstances, it would have been very difficult for an average male, especially a young male, to resist the advances of an attractive female. But God intervened and protected him by showing him a sign which reminded Yusuf that this act was totally forbidden and was one of the major sins and was hardly suited to the high moral character of a prophet who remains innocent no matter what the temptation is. Innocent, of course, when spoken about a prophet, means the prophet cannot commit any sin. If the prophet does something wrong, it is always a little slip, like in the case of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, Adam, when they were thrown out of heaven, of paradise. The words used in the Quran are the words which mean they slipped and not that he sinned. Now, these two words, كَذَلِكَ لِنَصْرِفَ عَنْهُ السُّوءَ وَالْفَحْشَاءَ. Su'a has been explained by commentators as being the saghira or the minor sins. And fasha means the kabira or the major sins. So all these kinds of sins are removed from the psyche or the thinking of the prophets. Now, according to some commentators, Zulaykha is the name given to this woman, the wife of the Aziz, but this is not mentioned in the Quran. This is taken from some traditions. So it is said that when Zulaykha intended to do this act, she covered one of her idols, they were idol worshippers, and explained to Yusuf alayhi salam that she was ashamed of committing a sin before the idols. And this was a sign to Yusuf, and he thought, how could one sin before God? If she's ashamed of sinning before an idol, then how could one sin before God? And this was a proof for him to stay away from all this. Also, some commentators mentioned that at that point, Jibreel alayhi salam appeared, Gabriel appeared, and he sort of reminded him of the behavior that was expected from him. This is mentioned by Al-Razi. And some other commentators mentioned that the sign was that he saw his father. And that also, of course, was like a deterrent. I'd like to mention here that at that time, Egypt was ruled by the shepherd kings. They are also known as the Hyksos kings of the 15th generation. And according to the historians, they were originally They were Arabs and they were Bedouins. And the king of the time of Yusuf alayhi salam his name was Apophis. And the time of the Hyksos kings was from about 1650 to 1550 BC. So this is before the pharaohs. The story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam comes before the pharaohs. وَاسْتَبَقَ الْبَابَ وَقَدَّتْ قَمِيصَهُ مِنْ دُبُرٍ وَأَلْفَيَ سَيَّدَهَا لَدَى الْبَابِ قَالَتْ مَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ أَرَادَ بِأَهْلِكَ سُوءًا إِلَّا يُسْجَنَ أَوْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Now, what happened was that Yusuf alayhi salam was trying to run away from this woman. And it was a big palace, I'm sure, that they were living in, and there were a lot of doors. And according to some commentators, she had locked all the doors and she had the keys with her. She had hidden the keys. But as he ran, the doors kept opening for him, miraculously kept opening for him. And it just happened by chance that when she came to the last door, and the door opened as well, that door also opened, they found the Aziz standing near the door. And I think I should read the whole of the English. Then both ran towards the door, and she tore his shirt from behind. And they found her master standing near the door. She said, what is the punishment of the one who approaches your wife with evil intentions, except imprisonment or painful punishment? Now she quickly changes her stance. So this is like she pretended that, and she falsely accused Yusuf of trying to assault her. So this was like a very cunning kind of act that she did, and only a person who is in the habit of lying and cheating can do this with such alacrity. And she also, of course, attempted to exonerate herself. Some scholars go so far as to say that although at that time Zulaikha loved Yusuf, her love was not yet sincere and complete, and was at the lower station of selfishness and the physical attraction only, rather than a selfless, sacrificing and spiritual state. Others say that her love for Yusuf was so great that it blinded her to every other consideration, including having him punished for a crime he did not commit. These are the opinions of the various commentators of the Quran. Now, when she said this, when she changed her stance and she addressed her husband and said, what is the punishment for the one who approached your wife with evil intentions, except imprisonment and painful punishment? She is trying to take revenge on Yusuf because he did not submit to her, as well as saving her own skin. قَالَ هِيَ رَاوَدْتَنِي عَنْ نَفْسِي وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِّنْ أَهْلِهَا إِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ قُبُلٍ فَصَدَقَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. So Yusuf said, she was the one who tried to seduce me, and a witness who belonged to her family testified, if his shirt is torn from the front, then she is truthful and he is of the liars. Now, who is the witness? And they say that this was one of Zulaikha's paternal cousins. This is not given in the Quran, who was a wise man. And when this sort of problem came up, and both were accusing each other, then this wise man gave his verdict. He said, if his shirt is torn from the front, then she is truthful and he is of the liars. The next sentence is, وَإِنْ كَانَ قَمِيصُهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ فَكَذَبَتْ وَهُوَ مِنَ الصَّادِقِينَ. And if his shirt is torn from the back, then she has lied and he is of the truthful. So as she chased him and caught hold of his shirt, it got torn from the back. And this is the verdict of the wise man, that if it's torn from the front, then that means Yusuf is the one who is guilty, and if it's torn from the back, then she is guilty. فَلَمَّا رَأَى قَمِيصَهُ قُدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ قَالَ إِنَّهُ مِنْ كَيْدِكُنَّ إِنَّ كَيْدَكُنَّ عَظِيمٌ. So when he, that is the husband, saw that his shirt was torn from the back, he said, this is the deceit of you women. Indeed, the deceit of women is dangerous. Now the husband knows who is guilty, but he is not accusing his wife, and he's making a general statement that this is the deceit of women, he says, making a general statement to sort of like gloss over it or not to make it sound so serious, and not directly accusing her. And he did not take it very seriously. Either he didn't take it seriously, or he tried to make it appear as if this was not a serious matter. Yusuf arid an haza wastaghfiri li zambiki innaki kunti min al-khati'in. So now he says to Yusuf, let this matter go, and you, O woman, ask forgiveness for your sins, for you are the one at fault. Let the matter go, that means just forget about it. Do not speak about it. Do not tell anyone about it. And he's trying to protect his wife, even though he does say that you are the one at fault. Some commentators have said that these words are spoken by the wise man, but to me it seems that these are the words of the husband. وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ امْرَأَةُ الْعَزِيزِ تُرَاوِدُ فَتَاهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا إِنَّا لَنَرَاهَا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. So the women of the city started to slander the minister's wife. Even though this was supposed to be a matter which was to be kept secret, some of the women in the city came to know about it. Now, some scholars say that these were the wives of the people who were working in the palace, like the one who was in charge of the kitchen, the one who was in charge of the guards, and the one who was in charge of the wine serving and all that. But we don't know. This is not clearly stated in the Quran. So the women of the city started to slander the minister's wife, saying she seduces her young slave in order to satisfy her lust. Love for him has sunk deep in her heart. We feel that she has clearly become perverted. So the women started gossiping. They started telling each other what had happened. And according to Allama Razi, the great classical commentator, they were plotting because they wanted to they also wanted to see Yusuf. They were curious as to how good looking and attractive he was. And they knew that their gossip would force Zulaikha to invite them in order to exonerate herself. According to the commentator Baghawi, there were about 40 women, but others say that there were about 4. So we don't know the exact number. فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنَّ أَرْسَلَتْ عَلَيْهِنَّ وَآتَدَتْ لهن متكأ وآتت كل واحدة منهن سكينا وقالت اخرج عليهن فلما رأينه أكبرنه وقطعن أيديهن وقلنا حاشا لله ما هذا بشرا إن هذا إلا ملك كريم. So now after she had heard about the slandering and the gossip, Zulaikha invited the women to her house and she arranged a very elaborate feast. And she put the food in front of them and put a sharp knife in front of each one of the women. Now some say that this was for the fruit that they were going to eat, and some say that they used to cut the meat before they ate it with a knife. So whatever it was for cutting the food. So when she heard of their slandering, she sent for them and made lavish arrangements. She gave each of them a sharp knife and then suddenly asked him, that is Yusuf a.s., to appear before them. When they saw him, they were struck by his presence and they cut their hands in surprise, exclaiming, "Glory be to God! This is not a mortal, but an honorable angel." So when they saw him, some commentators say that they saw his inner beauty and purity, which was visible on his face, and therefore they exonerated him of any lewd act. So they thought that he was too pure to have done anything like that. And also some say that they saw the inner beauty which is befitting a prophet, and the beauty and the majesty they had never seen before. So his beauty was also awe-inspiring. And some commentators like Mehbudi says that the rays of beauty illuminated their inner temples, that is of the women, and they lost ordinary consciousness of themselves, and that is how they cut their hands. قالت فذلكن الذي لمتنني فيه ولقد راودته عن نفسه فاستعصم ولئن لم يفعل ما آمره ليسجنن وَلَيَكُونَ مِنَ الصَّاغِرِينَ. This is the one you blamed me for, said the woman. Now, when the women had cut their hands, Zulaikha felt very triumphant. She said, "Now you see, you were blaming me. Look what's happened to you. This is the one you blamed me for," said the woman. "I tried to seduce him, but he managed to stay clear. And if he still does not do as I ask, he will be imprisoned and will be of those who are disgraced." So now you see, she's trying to tell them, look what happened to you. How can you blame me? And here you also realize that this was a very permissive and a liberal and a licentious and an immoral kind of society according to our values, or the values of the Quran, or the values that Yusuf a.s. had. And Zulaikha here says, I tried to seduce him, but he managed to stay clear. So by mentioning his staying clear, she means not as a way of praise, but she's blaming him for rejecting her. And it seems that the women sided with her. Here we don't realize this, but later on we find that the women had also sided with Zulaikha, which means that they were all sort of complicit in this kind of behavior. قَالَ رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنَّ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. So he said, Yusuf a.s. said, "O Lord," he's of course addressing God here, his Rabb, "O Lord, the prison is dearer to me than what they want to lure me to. If you do not remove their deceit from me, then I will also become attracted to them and will join the ranks of the ignorant." So he's not saying that I'm a very strong person and I have all these spiritual qualities, but he's very humbly admitting that he could also be lured into this trap, and he says, he prays to God that the prison is dearer to me. I would not mind being in the prison at all, as long as I'm away from the plots of these women, the plotting of these women. So the Prophet Yusuf preferred the next life over the pleasures. His reaction shows that he preferred the next life over the pleasures of this life, which would be immediate but short-lived, while the next life would mean God's pleasure and an everlasting success. The tussle here is between haq and batil. Haq is the truth and that which is pure, and batil is the false, and it comes from the taghuti forces, that is all the evil that comes from shaitan or Satan and his followers and his wishes. So he prays to God to remove their deceit from him so that he will be safe. And here the Arabic used is here, وَأَكُنْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ, it literally means that then he is afraid that he could also become one of the ignorant. And ignorance is often used to mean the behavior which came before and is against the teachings of the Prophet. Jahiliyyah is supposed to be a time which comes before the advent of a prophet. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ فَصَرَفَ عَنْهُ كَيْدَهُنَّ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. We are on verse number 34 now. His Lord answered his prayer and removed from him the women's deceit. Indeed, he is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. So this fact about the answering of prayers, this is mentioned very earlier on in Surah Al-Baqarah, which is Surah number 2, which we have already read, but I'd like to repeat this verse, Surah number 2, verse number 186. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ. And when my servants ask you about me, tell them I am close. God is addressing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When my servants ask you about me, tell them I am close. I listen to the prayers of the one who prays when he prays. So they should listen to my call and believe in me, that they may be rightly guided. So sometimes we keep praying and praying for a long time, and then we say our prayers are not being answered. But that is not true. The prayer is not being answered at that time because there is some good in it for us. The time that is being, we feel is being wasted, our time, our prayer is not being answered. Actually, it is bringing some good blessings to us. And if that prayer is not answered at all, then it is saved somewhere with God. There is a bank somewhere in heaven. And on the day of judgment, it is said that when people look at all the blessings they receive in exchange for all the prayers that were not answered, they will say, I wish none of my prayers had been answered. So we have to believe that prayers are also always answered in some way or the other. So his Lord answered his prayer and removed from him the women's deceit. He is the all-hearing and the all-knowing. So how was he removed from the women's deceit? By being put into prison. And we'll read the next verse. ثُمَّ بَدَا لَهُم مِّن بَعْدِ مَا رَأَوُا الْآيَاتِ لَيَسْجُنُنَّهُ حَتَّىٰ حِينٍ. Then they considered it right, even after having seen the signs of his purity, to imprison him for a while. Even though the husband had seen the signs of her innocence from what the verdict of the wise man, and seen his innocence, signs of his purity, still he put him into prison because Zulaykha, it is said, told her husband, this is not in the Quran, that because of Yusuf, her reputation was being stained. So, of course, he put him into prison. And some say that there's nothing in the Quran about exactly how long he stayed in prison. It says hatta heen, which can be, any amount of time. Some say it is from 9 to 10 years, and some give different figures like 12 years, some say just 5 years, and so on. So all the honor, Yusuf a.s. had all the honor and the luxury one could desire in this world. He was living in a palace with everything, that he could ever desire. But for him, this was a great price to pay if he became disobedient to God. And the moral values instilled by his father, even at a young age, the word probity can be used here, which is the high moral values that he carried were instilled in him by his father, besides the fact that God had made him a prophet and he was being trained as a prophet. So he was ready to give up all the luxuries and just live in a prison like an ordinary prisoner. وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ قَالَ أَحَدُهُمَا إِنِّي أَرَانِي أَعْصِرُ خَمْرًا وقال الآخر إني أراني أحمل فوق رأسي خبزا تأكل الطير منه نبئنا بتأويله إنا نراك من المحسنين. So they entered along with him 2 young men in the prison. 2 other young men were put into prison who were also servants of the king. I have also read somewhere that this prison was specially for the prisoners that the king had ordered to be put into prison. Said one of them, I saw now these 2 young men had seen dreams, and when they saw this very pious looking man, Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, and also they had been there for some time together, they asked him to give an interpretation of their dreams. Said one of them, I saw myself in a dream extracting juice for wine. Said the other, I saw myself carrying bread on my head while birds were eating from it. Give us the interpretation of this. We can see that you are of the virtuous. So the person who said that I saw in my dream I was extracting juice for wine, he was the wine carrier of the king. And he also served wine to the courtiers and the king. And the other one said, I saw myself carrying bread. He was supposed to be the baker, and some commentators say that he was in charge of the whole kitchen. So they related their dreams to Yusuf alayhi salam, and they were quite puzzled and they wanted to know what they meant. And here it is said, Inna naraka minal muhsinin. That means we see that you are of the virtuous. Muhsin actually comes from ihsan. It means person who does good beyond the call of duty. Even when people are talking, they sometimes say, you have done this ihsan on me, which means you didn't really have to do it. It wasn't your duty, but you did something extra for me. So muhsinin are the people who are better or more good than other people, who do good beyond the call of duty. And even in the prison, Yusuf alayhi salam had earned a great deal of respect. It is said that the people used to see how he was praying most of the time, and he was trying to help the other prisoners in whatever problems they had. قال لا يأتيكما طعام ترزقانه إلا نبأتكما بتأويله قبل أن يأتيكما ذلكما مما علمني ربي إني تركت ملة قوم لا يؤمنون بالله وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون. So he replied, Yusuf alayhi salam replied, even before the food that is served to you arrives, I will tell you both the meaning of these dreams. So they had a little time, a little gap before the food was going to be served. And he took this opportunity because now these people were, they were really keen to get an interpretation of their dreams, and also other people were listening. So Yusuf alayhi salam took this opportunity to give a little sermon in order to invite all the prisoners to the enduring faith. So he said that even before the food comes, I will tell you the meaning of these dreams, but let me say what I want to say first. And he says, this is a part of the knowledge that my Lord has instructed me with. So he was given the special ability to interpret dreams and future events. And he is showing his humility by saying that my Lord has given me this ability. And I reject the faith of the people who do not believe in God and deny the hereafter. So who are these people? The people that he's living with. Even the palace that he was living in, they were polytheists. The Aziz and his wife and all the people around him were polytheists. He says that I reject the faith of these people. Allama Bayzavi, a classical scholar, says that this approach that Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam has taken is like a progressive attitude in giving an invitation, in inviting people to the faith. Like he did not start by saying you are mushrik and you are doing your, worshipping idols, etc. But he started doing this in a very beautiful manner. We are on verse number 38. وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ أَبَائِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ. So I follow the faith of my fathers Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub. Now we know that Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam was the son of Yaqub alayhi salam, that is Jacob. And Jacob or Yaqub alayhi salam was the son of Ishaq alayhi salam or Isaac. And Isaac was the son of Ibrahim alayhi salam or Abraham. So these are his forefathers, father and forefathers. So he said, I follow the faith of my fathers Ibrahim. And we know that all of them were monotheists. And it is not proper for us to assign any partners to God. This is one of the favors bestowed on us and on all humanity by God, but most people do not give thanks. And now monotheism, or believing in the one God, is the highest truth in the universe. And this is the lesson that all the prophets started with. When they started teaching about their belief, they started with monotheism. And most of the nations that the prophets were sent to, in fact, all the nations, I think, that the prophets were sent to were polytheists. They believed in all kinds of ideals. And this is one of the favors bestowed on us. According to Yusuf alayhi salam, the favor is that he believes in one God. This is also a great favor. Ya sahibai sijni arbabun mutafarriquna khairun amillahu wahidul qahhar. O my two companions of the prison, are many different lords better, or the one God who is the dominator? Now this is a rhetorical question. You know that a rhetorical question is one which does not need an answer. The answer is built into the question. And most of the prophets, as we just said, had to face a fight against shirk or polytheism and bring people to monotheism. So his struggle had now started. So far it seems that he had never spoken about his faith, but now is the time to speak about it. ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر الله تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين دين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. You do not worship besides him but a few names that you have nominated, both you and your forefathers. God has not sent down any authority for them. No one has the right to command except God. He is the one who has commanded us not to worship anyone but him. This is the enduring faith, but most people do not understand. So he's trying to tell them now that the idols that you worship are nothing but names. They have nothing behind them. You have just made the idols yourself and you have given them some names. These are like figments of your imagination if you think that they have any kind of powers. And God has not sent down any authority for them. That is, there is no book, no prophet who taught you to teach these, to worship these idols. Now, this thing about the baker and the winemaker, it is said that the baker had plotted to poison the king and the wine carrier had aided him, or they thought he had. And that is why this is why the dreams interpreted that the one who was carrying the bread on his head would be punished. Now, this story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam is found in great detail in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, and in various chapters and verses. But even though the characters are the personalities are the same, and the stories are basically the same, but still there are a lot of differences. So he says here that he has commanded us not to worship anyone but him. So the reason, the logic that is given for this is that if there had been many gods, there would have been a conflict of interest and a lack of harmony in nature. The fact that nature is so harmonious, if one wants to get some peace of mind, where would one go? Would one go to one of the busiest markets in town, or would one want to go to a place where there was nothing man-made, it was purely natural? And we find that nature is harmonious, and that is why it gives us so much peace. Ya sahib as-sijni amma ahadukuma fayasqi rabbahu khamran wa amma al-akharu fayuslabu fatakulu at-tayru min rasihi qudiya al-amru allazi fihi tastaftiyan. O my two companions of the prison, one of you two will serve as master wine, and the other will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head. The matter about which you ask has already been decided. So now he's giving the interpretation of the dreams, and he says that the one who is going to serve wine is the wine carrier, and he has been found to be not guilty. So he will be let out of the prison and he will go back to his former job. But the other one, the baker or the in charge of the kitchen, he will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head, and the body they probably will leave on the cross, and then the birds will come and eat from his head. And he said that these decisions have already been made. So later on, these interpretations came out to be true. وقال للذين ظن أنه ناج منهما اذكرني عند ربك فأنساه الشيطان ذكر ربه فلبث في السجن بضع سنين. And he said to the one about whom he was sure that he would be released, mention me to your Lord. But Shaitan made him forget to mention him to his Lord. So he, that is Yusuf, was kept waiting in prison for a number of years. After he had given the interpretation, Yusuf ﷺ said to the wine carrier to mention him to his Lord, that is, to the king. But what happened was that he was so involved with his own affairs and he was so happy that he was being let out of prison that he forgot to mention it to the king for a long number of years. And he stayed, Yusuf ﷺ stayed an extra number of years in the prison, which some people say that 7 years after he was there for 5 years, and after he gave the interpretation and asked this man to speak to his Lord, he stayed another 7 years. But we are not sure because it's not there in the Quran. So that's why we have a conflicting number of years that he stayed in the prison, but it was a long time. وقال الملك إني أرى 7 بقرات سمان يأكلهن 7 إجاف وسبع سنبلات خضر وأخرى يابسات يا أيها الملأ أفتوني في رؤياي إن كنتم للرؤيا تعبرون. And what happened one day, the king said to his courtiers, I saw in my dream, the king had a dream and he said, I saw in my dream that there were 7 healthy cows being eaten up by 7 sickly cows and 7 green ears of grain and 7 dry ones. O courtiers, give me the interpretation of my dream if you are able. The king saw a dream which he could not understand. So he related it in his court and asked the courtiers. And he also, it is said, he asked all the people who were, good in the occult. They could sort of either tell dreams or tell the future, the kahins and all those people. So they called all these people dealing in the occult, but they all said these are قالوا أضغاث أحلام وما نحن بتأويل الأحلام بعالمين. So they said these are bad dreams and we do not know how to interpret them. They are very confusing dreams. At this point, the prisoner, who had been a prisoner, the wine carrier, he remembered Yusuf ﷺ and how correct his interpretation had been. So he asked of the king, he said, وَقَالَ الَّذِي نَجَا مِنْهُمَا وَادَّكَرَ بَعْدَ أُمَّةٍ أَنَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِتَأْوِيلِهِ فَأَرْسِلُونِ. Said the one of the 2 prisoners who had been released and who now recollected after a long time, I will find out the interpretation, so let me go to the prison. So now the matter of interpretation has come up and he remembers Yusuf ﷺ. Yusufu ayyuha siddiqu aftina fi 7 baqaratin simanin ya'kuluhunna 7 ijafun wa 7 sumbulatin khudurin wa ukhra yabisatin li'alli arji'u ila an-nasi la'allahum ya'lamun. He said, O Yusuf the truthful, Siddiq, he calls him Siddiq, tell me the meaning of this dream. 7 healthy cows being eaten up by 7 sickly cows. This is the dream that the king had had, that he saw 7 healthy cows being eaten up by 7 sickly cows, and there are 7 green ears of grain and 7 dried ones, so that I would return to the people who would then come to know. Now, the reason why he calls him Siddiq is, firstly, his interpretation came out to be true, and he had seen also in the prison, he had seen that he was always telling the truth. And also, Siddiq is a rank of the spiritually elevated. We had read about this in Surah An-Nisa, I think it was verse number 69, that the higher spiritual hierarchy of human beings is the Nabiyina wa Siddiqina wa Shuhada wa Salihin. So after the Nabis, after the prophets come the Siddiq. They have a very high spiritual station. So he's calling Yusuf alayhi salam a Siddiq. Now Yusuf alayhi salam had been all this while in the prison without having been charged with any crime or any wrong that he had done. And therefore no one came to ask about him. So he asked this prisoner, and the prisoner also forgot to mention him to the king. The king had allowed this man to go back to the prison and get the interpretation from Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam. So he says, so that I will return to the people who would then come to know. So come to know what? Come to know the 2 interpretations. And also he meant that people would come to know about Yusuf alayhi salam and his plight and his true rank and knowledge. قَالَ تَزْرَعُونَ سَبْعَ سِنِينَ دَأَبًا فَمَا حَصَدتُّمْ فَذَرُوهُ فِي سُنبُلِهِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تَأْكُلُونَ. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam does not just give the interpretation, he also gives a solution to their problem. He says, you will sow as usual for a continuous period of 7 years. Leave whatever you reap in the ears, except the little that you can consume. The ears of the grain are include the covering over the grain, which is like the protective covering. It's the packaging of nature. So he says, do not remove the covering, save some of the grain for the future years and leave them in the covering. And then he says, ثُمَّ يَأْتِ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ سَبْعٌ شِدَادٌ يَأْكُلْنَ مَا قَدَّمْتُمْ لَهُنَّ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّا تُحْسِنُونَ. Then there will come 7 years which will be very severe. So after the 7 good years of harvest, they will have some very bad years in which there will be no rain, there will be famine and a dearth of food and drought and difficulty. And he says, you will use up whatever you had saved earlier for them, except a little that you will preserve. So he's suggesting that they preserve some of the grain for the bad years. So there was going to be an agricultural crisis in Egypt of that time. And this was like 15 years of Egypt's agricultural cycle, 7 years plus 7 years, and then the 15th year would bring in some rain and plenty. ثُمَّ يَأْتِي مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ عَامٌ فِيهِ يُغَاثُ النَّاسُ وَفِيهِ يَعْصِرُونَ. After this will come a year of plenty in which rain will be sent for people, and they will extract the juice and oil from the fruit. So this will be the last year of this 15-year cycle, and this will be a blessed year and a year of bounty, and there will be fruit and food in abundance. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُ الرَّسُولُ قَالَ ارْجِعْ إِلَىٰ رَبِّكَ فَاسْأَلْهُ مَا بَالُ النِّسْوَةِ اللَّاتِي قَطَّعْنَ أَيْدِيَهُنَّ إِنَّ رَبِّي بِكَيْدِهِنَّ عَلِيمٌ. Now, Yusuf alayhi salam has so much dignity that he doesn't jump up and pick up his things and say, okay, I'm free now, I can go out of the prison. No, he says, on hearing this, he said, no, sorry, I've jumped up a little. That will come later. So on hearing the interpretation, the wine bearer, goes back to the king and gives him the interpretation. And the king says, bring him to me. That is, bring Yusuf alayhi salam to me. And when the messenger came to him, Yusuf said, so the messenger came to Yusuf and said, the king wants to see you. And then Yusuf alayhi salam said, go back to your king and ask him as to what was the reality of the women who had cut their hands. Indeed, my Lord is well aware of their cunning. Now, he does not say the reality of the woman who tried to seduce me. He says the reality of the women who had cut their hands. That means when they had come to this meal that Zulaikha had laid out for them, they all sided with Zulaikha. That is why he says, go and ask what was the reality of these women. And as I said, some commentators say that these women were just four. One was the wife of the chief of the kitchen, one was the wife of the wine bearer, one wife of the chief of security, and one was the wife of the guardian of the jail. But others say that there were many more women. So whatever it was, he said, go and tell the king to find out what happened, what was the reality behind that case, the reason why they had put me in prison. Now, قال فما خطبكن إذ راوتن يوسف عن نفسه قلنا حاشا لله ما علمنا عليه من سوء قالت امرأة العزيز الآن خسخس الحق أنا راودته عن نفسه وإنه لمن الصادقين. Now, so the king sent for all these women, including of course Zulaikha, and he asked what was the reality of the case of the attempt to seduce Yusuf. And all the women said, Hasha lillahi, that means God save us. The women answered, we did not find any evil in him. So they absolved him of any blame. Then said the wife of the minister, Zulaikha, now that the truth has come to light, I will confess that it was I who tried to seduce him, but he was steadfast. Now, in all these years, Zulaikha has sort of matured and she's taking responsibility for her deed. She's saying it was I who tried to seduce him. Some commentators like to say at this point that Zulaikha's love for Yusuf had developed and matured and was not just a physical attraction. Earlier, she had blamed him falsely because her desire was more important than his well-being. But now, her self-interest became of secondary importance. Therefore, she spoke the truth about him and confessed to her own fault. Some commentators say that this is a kind of a progression in her spiritual journey. And the infatuation with his physical beauty was transformed into spiritual love, in which he is able to see his inner, true spiritual beauty. We are now on verse number 52. ذَلِكَ لِيَعْلَمَ أَنِّي لَمْ أَخُنْهُ بِالْغَيْبِ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي كَيْدَ الْخَائِنِينَ. At this, Yusuf, who is still in prison at this time, said, I did this so that means I sent you back to ask the king to find out, what had happened to what the women had done. He said, I did this so that the minister would know that I did not betray his trust in his absence, that Zulaikha's husband, Al-Aziz, would come to know that I was not the one at fault and I did not betray his trust in his absence. God does not sanction the deceit of the betrayers. وَمَا أُبْرِيُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. I cannot acquit myself of all blame. Now this is Hazrat Yusuf ﷺ speaking. He's not saying I am so innocent. He's saying I cannot acquit myself of all blame, for the soul is inclined towards evil, except for the one on whom my Lord has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is the much forgiving, the ever merciful. So he is so humble that he is not trying to pretend that he was the strong party. He's saying that I do not acquit myself of all blame. That means that I should also be blamed for some of this, because in my heart I had also started getting attracted to her. And he is trying to say that his moral success, he attributes his moral success to the mercy and the grace of God. And here is the first mention of, we talk about the development of the soul. That is a very interesting topic. And here the first stage in the development of the soul is mentioned, the Ammaratum Bisu. That is the soul which is inclined towards evil, or which instructs the person to commit evil. And if we have some time later on, maybe in a next lesson, we can discuss the different stages in the development of the soul. But we know that this is the first stage in the development of the soul, in which the soul, the word used for soul here is nafs. Nafs can also mean the person, the ego, and the soul. So the soul is instructing or sort of goading the person to do something wrong. And if that person has not acquired any strength in his inner strength, then that person will give in. So he says that except for the one on whom my Lord has mercy, that means God has protected me. Indeed, my Lord is the much forgiving, the ever merciful. Yes, we would also like to mention that here with verse number 53, we are starting the 13th part. Part means the Arabic word is juz, and the word in other language is sipara or para. So we are now on we just discussed that this is the first stage in the development of the soul, where the base desires, forgetfulness of God, and going against his commands, God's commands, all this is to be found in the first stage, and this is when the soul has not been trained enough. And I'll just mention the other stages. The second stage is the al-nafs al-lawwama, in which this is mentioned in the verse number al-qiyamah, verse number 2, and this is closer to having a developed conscience. And when one has developed a conscience and one is being tempted to do something, then there is an inner voice, the conscience, which controls us. And if that person keeps on developing because of his own efforts and because of his environment, then he reaches the third stage, which is the nafs al-mutmainna, or the blissful soul, or the soul at peace. This is to be found in Surah Al-Fajr, verse number 27. So in the third stage, one gets grace and wisdom and virtue. And I would like to discuss this in detail. We don't have enough time today, but inshallah, we'll do it some other time. So just let's finish verse number 54 as well. وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصْهُ لِنَفْسِي فَلَمَّا كَلَّمَهُ قَالَ إِنَّكَ الْيَوْمَ لَدَيْنَا مَكِينٌ أَمِينٌ. The king said, bring him to me. When the king heard the interpretation of his dream, he was very impressed that here is a wise man who not only can give the interpretation of the dream, but he can foresee the future and he can give a remedy for it. So he said, bring him to me. I will reserve him for myself. That means I will give him a very important position next to myself. And when the king spoke to him, so when Yusuf alayhi salam came and the king spoke to him, he said, from now on, you will be with us as the most honorable and trusted person. And the king put him in charge of the storehouses and the finances of the land. I think we can stop here now. No, we have stopped. We have done up to verse number 54, and inshallah next time we will carry on from verse number 55 of Surah Yusuf. If there is any question, we can take it now. All right, if there are no questions, then we can say a little prayer. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar wa adkhilna al-jannata ma'al abrar ya azizu ya ghaffar ya rabbil alamin bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Ameen summa ameen. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walal akhiratu khairul laka minal ula. Ameen. And may your every tomorrow be better than every today. Ameen. Thank you everyone for joining us, for giving your time and attention. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Jazakallah.